Hi, we're here today. I just read a brand new book by a new author, JP Cunningham, which is, he's a first-time author. Someone recommended the book to me and I was blown away. It was fantastic. So I wanted to see if we could make time to have a chat and learn more about the book. It's really interesting character study, but also historical fiction. So it's sort of an adventure and a mystery and a love story, but it's so beautifully written. It's a real page turner. So yeah, let's sort of hear more from the author. So is it Paul or JP or what to be?
Paul, yes, I go by the name Paul.
And where are you? You're based in Melbourne.
I am, yes. We're in the middle of our second phase of lockdown here, so enjoying that.
Okay, so let's chat a bit more about the book. You just released it a few weeks ago, was it?
Yes, it was released sort of officially. The online launch was on solstice, 21st of June this year. So yeah, it's out there now. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks.
An amazing read, real page turner. Personally, I don't really read a lot of fiction, but I was really drawn into the story, and yeah, would just love to learn more about these amazing characters and as well the history. Obviously, you've written in the front of the book that it is based on some history. The main characters were real historical figures, and then also you weave in this beautiful Aztec history in there, which sort of takes you on a quest through South America. So yeah, please tell us some more about it from your...
I think you described it better than I could. Yeah, so it's a novel about a voyage to South America and Central America in 1820 by a captain called Basil Hall. And the book is written from the perspective of the ship's captain at the end of his life, when he is reflecting on the voyage. So it involves his mind is failing him. So it involves the true story of the voyage, but also there's a lot of imagination coming in, and it becomes a sort of a cathartic quest in the end. So yes, it's mixing a lot of the. It's based on a real journal that was published by Captain Basil Hall, and then some discoveries I made about the ship's log that actually still existed, and some revelations in there that weren't mentioned by the captain when he wrote the story.
You know, it's interesting because it's sort of quite an obscure, because after I read the book, I wanted to go and research the history, so I looked up Basil Hall and the Conway. That was a really fascinating little journey too, but it's not something that anyone would commonly know. How did you stumble upon the story in the first place?
I wanted to write originally about a painting called The Quest that was painted by an Australian artist called Lindsay Bernard Hall at the sort of the turn of the sort of 1905, around that sort of time, so turn of the 20th century. And the painting really fascinated me, and it turned out that Bernard Hall, the artist, was in the same family as this Captain Basil Hall. And I started Googling and looking up this Basil Hall guy, and it turned out that by complete coincidence, there was a first edition of his book about the voyage in the museum, in the rare books collection in the museum that sits next to the art gallery in Brisbane, where this painting hangs. So I ended up getting entry into this rare books collection, and sat and read the book about Basil Hall, and then found out that the logbook existed, and started looking at the story and finding, I say, there was this death that happened that Basil Hall doesn't comment on, and then the whole thing just sprang to life and became this sort of fascination for years to come until the story was finally completed. So yeah.
You saw that painting around 10 years ago. You've been working on the book for that long?
Yeah.
Or that?
Well, yeah, yeah. No, it's true. It's true. It's like one of those questions, 10 years. But I had to learn. I mean, I do writing a lot for work. So I'm a scientist, and I'm used to writing a lot. But I had to learn, and I had this idea that wouldn't leave me. This book that had to be written. But I had to learn to write as well. There's a certain method, craft to writing. There's some really clunky, horrible versions along the way, and obviously lots of things that had to change, and I've learned a lot. And so I think a lot of it has been part of my learning to master the craft of writing as well. And it takes a long time. People like to think, oh, I can write a book in a year and things, but I think people who write, trying to write seriously, realize that, learning to write is hard. So.
But that's really almost shocking to me, because your writing is incredible. Like the descriptive way that you write, and you feel like you're in the scene. You feel like you're with the characters watching the sunset, or like it's so beautifully written. And for you to have a science background, like you said, obviously you write a lot. I'm sure you write a lot of papers and things, but this is so creative. Was that, obviously you could use your writing skills, but was that a difficult process to learn? And obviously you have a gift for doing creative writing anyway, because even after 10 years, people wouldn't be able to write like that. So how was that process for you? Like, how did you do that? Did you read, other people's books, or how do you try and learn that?
Well, I don't read a lot of historical fiction. I've read a lot more now, but I hadn't done. And I wanted to learn to write like Basil Hall, but in a way that was more contemporary. So, the sort of older style of writing has a different feel to it, a different flow. And I was trying to learn that, but sort of tell it in a more contemporary way, or in my own way. So I guess that style just emerged from there. But I did study it a lot, and I'm really fascinated in words and descriptions, and I could spend hours over a single line, or a little paragraph, and then you just, I get so much enjoyment out of that when that little paragraph is right. And I think that, so I did study it a lot to get the descriptions the way they are. I also used, and there's an acknowledgement in the back of the book where there's points where I actually used Basil Hall's own words in his books, because there's a few times that he says things just so beautifully, that I could never do it like that. I could never write like that. But also, I wanted to capture him in the book. The book is him, and so the fact that his words resonate in places of the book, to me, is kind of like he's in there. And it's the same around the time of the death that forms the centre of the novel. Basil Hall and another guy, George Burney, who's the ship's surgeon, as you know, they were they wrote letters regarding this death, which I say were never published or found. They sat in this archive, and those words and those emotions, raw emotions that they felt, come into the story. So, and so it's got a lot of it had a lot of realness to it for me, and and I guess I just sort of learned. I learned that Basil's voice from, and he's published a lot of other work as well, so I really did study him as a character.
Obviously you have a great imagination, but how do you get to there? How do you create that journey? Did you have a planned story, or did you just sort of start writing and connecting with these characters, and then it just developed of its own?
I didn't have a plan. I have a lot of things come to me in sort of flashes. So I would see scenes. There's some very important scenes in the book that have been with me all along, and some of them have moved around in the book and shifted around until they found the right place. So I see those things very vividly, and I think what happens when it's an odd thing, when you start writing a fictional novel and you want to give it that freedom of being imaginative, fiction, having a fictional element as well as a historical element. I think you create these characters, and then they just go wandering around in your subconscious. It's in the same way that dream characters tend to play out your emotions and play with your emotions in their own little scenarios. And it's the same with book characters. I think they just go off into your head and they grab emotions and scenarios and start playing with them. And I think that's where those fictional stories come from. It's not like you actually sit and try and think. I don't think of a plot. I just let the characters write their story.
And the characters are, like, you write about them again so beautifully. And I think as a reader, you connect to them as well. And they're all, they all have their own personalities, and some are quite eccentric, and even, the kind of characters that are a bit evil or whatever as well, that you bring them to life just so incredibly. So yeah, I think just congratulations on that too. Do you have a favorite in the
Oh, I think Basil's my favorite. I think he has to be. But yeah, it's funny, I have the audiobook is just it's in its final stages of mastering, so that's just coming out now. And it was amazing giving this story to someone else, the narrator, David Sweeney Rare, who is an incredible narration. He's got his portrayal of the characters is beautiful, and his accents and personalities really come out. And I've actually grown to like characters that I sort of didn't think, I thought they're all right, sort of developed them. But when I've heard them back to me, played by effectively an actor, narrator, I've got new favorites as well. So
the story is developing for you. I listened to a few episodes of that, and it's fantastic. That would be a definitely one to listen to when it comes out on Audible. But it's on SoundCloud at the moment. Is that right?
It is. There's so it's being serialized on SoundCloud for free at the moment, but that may change when it comes out. Well, it will change when it comes out on Audible. So that's a limited time. But it was just a great experience. And for me, when you write and you write a story, it would be lovely to think, when you see on the movies and things, they're typing and finish, and it's the end. But it's not like that. And you're going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. And then there's this big editing process where you're tweaking things. So in the end, your mind has the story very much as this sort of jigsaw of, you've got the picture, but really you see it as all the pieces in a way. And so even though I knew the story, I didn't, in some ways, didn't see it as that sort of temporal thing that goes from start to finish. And hearing the audiobook was just, for me, it was mind-blowing, because I heard the story being told back to me by someone else with a different voice. And I say, David really, really does this beautifully. And it was like, it became super vivid for me. And I was supposed to be editing it when he first sent them to me, and I was supposed to be going through and just listening. And I couldn't, because I was so wrapped up in the story, and it was so just like, I was seeing it in my head that, it was an amazing experience.
And so for people who haven't read the book, or what would you want to say? Like, can you give us just a synopsis of why people
should read it?
Give us your elevator pitch.
I think I don't know. I mean, obviously I love it. I think it's different. I think because I didn't go in knowing what genre I was, or knowing, or with any preconceptions about it selling well or anything like that. I just had this story I wanted to tell. I think there's, I like to think there's some originality in that, and it's a little bit different. And it's just,
no, I think that's the thing. It's very unique. It's very different. It draws you in. It's a fantastic book. So congratulations.
Thanks very much.
On to the second one. Maybe there's going to be a movie.
Hope so. Thank you.
Yeah, well done. And good luck.
Thanks.